In the glittering world of fame, where every move is monitored and every smile captured by thousands of lenses, the line between public image and private truth is almost impossible to cross. Yet sometimes, the most powerful stories don't come from what's seen, but from what was never meant to be revealed. And this is the story of a photograph, a single image that shouldn't exist, yet somehow does, linking Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo'S in a way that shook even the most skeptical hearts. The tale begins not under the bright spotlights of award shows or the flashing cameras of fan meetings, but in the quiet corridors of a nearly forgotten studio. Years ago, when the world was just beginning to whisper their names together, there was a moment, a fleeting instant, where their guard fell. They thought it was just between them. No cameras, no audience, no need to perform. But fate had other plans. This photograph, blurry at first glance, but piercingly clear once studied, captured them in a way no one was ever supposed to see. It wasn't staged. It wasn't promotional. It wasn't even professional. It was raw, unfiltered, and terrifyingly real. And when it resurfaced recently, fans didn't just see two stars, they saw a secret memory frozen in time. The story of how this photograph came to be is just as unbelievable as the picture itself. It wasn't taken during a shoot, nor was it part of an official project. It was an accident that should have been erased, yet somehow slipped through the cracks of time. Imagine a late night in Beijing, the kind of night when the city refuses to sleep, when the neon lights reflect off rain-soaked streets. Xiao Zhan had just finished a long day of filming, his face still carrying the fatigue of hours under the director's scrutiny. Wang Yibo'S, equally drained from rehearsals, happened to arrive at the same location, a private dance studio tucked behind layers of anonymity. They weren't scheduled to meet. In fact, no one knew they were both there. But that's where the impossible begins. Inside the studio, the lights were dim, the only sound being the soft hum of an old speaker. Yibo'S, restless as ever, had been working through a choreography, his body moving like water, sharp, precise, yet untamed. Xiao Zhan, curious and perhaps drawn by something deeper, quietly entered. What happened next was less of an interaction and more of a collision between two worlds. No words at first. Just a glance. A faint smile. An understanding that needed no explanation. Xiao Zhan, without thinking, picked up an old Polaroid camera sitting on the corner table, one of those retro ones left behind by the studio staff. He aimed it playfully at Yibo'S, who was mid-spin, his hair brushing across his eyes, his expression vulnerable in the unguarded moment. The flash went off, startling both of them. Click. That was the photograph. Not glamorous, not polished, but hauntingly beautiful. Yibo'S frozen in motion, Xiao Zhan's shadow visible in the corner, his presence unmistakable. It wasn't just an image, it was a confession, a fragment of time that held more emotion than either dared to speak aloud. They laughed it off then, brushing aside the weight of it. Xiao Zhan slipped the photograph into his pocket, telling Yibo'S he'd keep it safe, jokingly calling it their little secret. But secrets have a way of resurfacing. 4 years, the photo remained hidden, tucked away in a notebook Xiao Zhan carried during his travels. It was never meant to be shared, never meant to be seen by anyone else. Until one day, during a frantic move between apartments, it was misplaced. Somehow, someone found it. And now, years later, it has returned, not in the hands of strangers, but in the whispers of fans who swear they've seen it passed around like contraband evidence. The reaction? Explosive. Social media ignited with speculation. Was it real? Was it photoshopped? Some insisted it was an old fan-made image, while others argued the details were too precise, too intimate to fake. The light in Yibo'S eyes, the angle of Xiao Zhan's silhouette, details that no outsider could have recreated. The debate only fueled the fire. And then came the most shocking twist: neither Xiao Zhan nor Wang Yibo'S denied it. Silence, their chosen weapon. No clarification, no dismissal, just quiet acknowledgement that spoke louder than any statement could. And in that silence, the photograph transformed from rumor into legend. Fans began dissecting every detail. Why was Xiao Zhan holding the camera? Why was Yibo'S looking not at the lens, but slightly past it, as if his eyes were locked on Xiao Zhan himself? Why was the photograph never released, even during their peak promotional era? Each question added to the mythology, turning a simple snapshot into an unsolved riddle. But the most compelling theory comes from those who believe this wasn't just a memory, but a promise. A memory of a night when they weren't actors or idols, but just two young men who found comfort in each other's presence. A promise that no matter what storms came their way, they would always have this moment untouched, untainted, theirs alone. And perhaps that is why the photograph shouldn't exist. Because it defies the carefully built walls of the entertainment industry, where intimacy is forbidden and authenticity is masked. It's proof that beneath the layers of professionalism, scripted interactions, and orchestrated appearances, something real happened. Something undeniable. Imagine holding that photo in your hands. The edges slightly worn, the colors faded with time, yet the emotions as sharp as the day it was taken. It's not just paper. It's history. It's vulnerability. It's a story frozen in an instant that neither fame nor time could erase. The most spine-chilling part? Rumors say there's not just one photograph. Some whisper about a second shot, one never meant to see daylight. This alleged image doesn't just capture Yibo mid-dance, but shows both of them, side by side, unaware of the camera. A moment of laughter, Xiao Zhan's head tilted toward Yibo, their expressions relaxed in a way fans have rarely seen publicly. If this second photograph exists, it's hidden far more carefully than the first. And so the legend grows. The photograph that shouldn't exist has become more than an image. It's become a symbol. A reminder that even in the harshest industries, even under the most suffocating scrutiny, there are moments of truth that escape control. Moments that can't be scripted or erased. For Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo', the resurfacing of this secret memory may not have been part of their plan, but maybe, just maybe, it was fate's way of reminding the world that behind every carefully curated persona is a human story waiting to be told. Because sometimes, the most powerful love letters aren't written with words. Sometimes, they're captured in a flash of light, in a photograph that wasn't supposed to exist. And this one, this single, fragile piece of paper may be the most revealing chapter in their story yet. So the question remains, who holds the photograph now? Is it still in Xiao Zhan's possession, quietly guarded as a relic of the past? Or has it traveled further, into hands that may one day decide to reveal it fully to the world? Until then, it remains a ghost, haunting both fans and the stars themselves, reminding them that memories, once captured, can never truly be destroyed. The photograph exists. And because it exists, it rewrites everything we thought we knew. The story of that photograph cannot simply be told in passing. It deserves to be relived moment by moment, because every second leading to that single flash of light was loaded with tension, vulnerability, and a rare kind of magic. The rain outside had just begun to settle, leaving the city drenched in silver reflections. The studio's floor, polished but scarred from years of use, gleamed faintly under the weak overhead bulbs. The air smelled faintly of resin and old wood, carrying the quiet history of countless rehearsals. Inside, Wang Yibo' moved like a storm contained in human form. His body cut through the silence, sharp turns followed by graceful slides, sweat glistening on his forehead as the music pounded through the lone speaker. Each movement was raw, not choreographed for fans or for the stage, but for himself. It was the kind of dance he only allowed when no one was watching, stripped of performance, born out of pure instinct. Xiao Zhan hadn't meant to intrude. He had only come because the night felt unbearably heavy after his long day of shooting. Something, perhaps fate itself, pulled him toward that quiet building. He recognized Yibo'S motorbike outside, leaned casually against the wall like a silent witness. And so he followed the faint sound of music, pushing open the studio door without announcing himself. The sight that met his eyes stopped him in his tracks. Yibo' didn't notice him at first. He was spinning, almost floating, his hair brushing across his eyes, every movement sharp yet fluid, like water cutting through stone. For a few seconds, Xiao Zhan just watched, caught in the gravity of it. There was something almost painful about the beauty of the moment, so unguarded, so unrepeatable. And then his eyes fell on the camera. It was sitting carelessly on the corner table, a Polaroid, old and scratched, probably used by trainees or staff for fun. Xiao Zhan didn't even think. Instinct guided him as he picked it up, the weight of it heavy and nostalgic in his hands. He remembered using one just like it years ago, when dreams were simpler. Without calling out, without warning, he raised it. Click. The flash burst across the dim room, searing into the shadows. Yibor froze mid-movement, startled, his gaze whipping toward the light. For a split second, his expression was unfiltered, vulnerable, surprised, and almost tender. It was that expression, more than the pose, that burned itself into the photo. When the soft whir of the film rolling out filled the silence, Xiao Zhan laughed. He held the developing square between his fingers, teasing, "Caught you." Yibo'S lips curved into that small, almost reluctant smile, the one that never reached the stage lights but always lived in his private moments. He walked toward him, still breathless, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "You're ridiculous," Yibor muttered, though his voice carried no real annoyance. He glanced at the photo as the image slowly began to appear, colors and shapes bleeding into life. When he saw it, truly saw it, his expression shifted. His usual calm cracked, and for a second, he seemed caught between wanting to take it and wanting to look away. Xiao Zhan noticed. "What? Don't like it?" he teased again, but softer this time, his eyes searching Yibo'S face. Yibor shook his head. "It's not that." His voice dropped, almost drowned by the fading music. "It's too real." That was the moment everything changed. Because the photograph wasn't just a picture. It was evidence of something neither of them dared to put into words. In the half-lit room, the Polaroid captured more than an image, it captured trust, presence, and the invisible thread binding them together. Xiao Zhan tucked the photo into his pocket with an almost protective instinct. "Then we keep it," he said firmly, as if declaring ownership over a secret no one else could touch. For the rest of that night, the camera stayed forgotten, but the photo weighed on them both like a silent witness. They didn't speak of it again, not directly. Instead, they filled the hours with quiet conversation about the pressure of their schedules, about the suffocating expectations that followed them everywhere, about the rare freedom of being in a space with no eyes, no judgment. At one point, Yibor sat cross-legged on the floor, his hair still damp, his expression unusually open. "Do you ever think about what people would say if they saw us like this?" he asked. Xiao Zhan, leaning against the wall, only smiled faintly. "Let them wonder. The truth is ours, not theirs." The words lingered, heavy but comforting. Neither of them realized then how prophetic they would become. Hours later, when dawn began to creep through the blinds, they parted ways. Xiao Zhan still had the photo tucked carefully in his notebook. Yibor glanced at it one last time before leaving, his expression unreadable but his eyes carrying a weight Xiao Zhan would never forget. And so the photograph lived on. It traveled with Xiao Zhan through filming sets, tucked safely between pages of lyrics and scribbled notes. He carried it like a talisman, though he never dared show it. Some nights, when exhaustion pressed too heavily on his shoulders, he'd pull it out and look at it not for what it showed, but for what it reminded him of, that there was a place, a moment, where he could be himself. What neither of them anticipated was that this secret, like all secrets, could slip. And when it finally resurfaced years later, in whispers and rumors, it wasn't just an old photograph anymore. It was a memory reborn, pulling everyone back to that night in the studio, to that single flash that changed everything. Because the photograph wasn't supposed to exist. And yet it does. And because it does, it refuses to let their story fade. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more breathtaking untold stories about Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo'S that you won't find anywhere else.